see them right there? They're hiding. There is fish in the tank, it's just you can't actually see them. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Herd Way, and welcome back to another video. I keep African cichlids, and one of the main things that I like to focus on is how to keep my fish happy and healthy. One thing that a lot of new fish keepers tend to struggle with is the issue of Malawi bloat. I just wanted to take the time to go through and discuss the reasons why this tends to happen sometimes, and what can you actually do about it to prevent it, which is one of the main things that I want to focus on here. It's not so much the treatment of it, I can cover that in another video. It's prevention, because prevention is so much better than a treatment. So I'll share with you the 5 main reasons why your fish could be getting bloat. Number 1, feeding the incorrect food for your species of fish or overfeeding your fish. This might seem like a simple thing, but to newer fish keepers and sometimes even more experienced fish keepers, this can be a difficult balance to understand and get in line with. Each fish is different. Sometimes it is a case of knowing your fish, knowing what they're like, knowing their feeding habits. If you are breeding fish, knowing their breeding habits. There's lots of things that go into it. So you know your fish better than anyone. If on the packet it says feed 3 times a day, I'm just giving an example, who follows instructions? That might be well and good in hindsight, and that might be the generalization of what these fish would eat. But it doesn't necessarily mean that's what your fish is going to eat. So it depends how many fish you've got in your tank, it depends what size they are, whether they are fry, they are juveniles, they're more adult fish. It all depends on the size of them, the size of your aquarium, your filter as well. What can your filter handle? Bear that in mind when you go happy with the scoop. This will serve you well when you encounter the next one. So feeding the wrong types of food for your fish. This is probably a big one, especially if you do keep several different species of fish, whether it be cold water fish, whether it be tropical fish, whether it be African cichlid types of fish. There is so many different things. They all need different levels of protein according to their species and their water temperature. You feed more in the summer and less in the winter to goldfish in a pond situation. It's the way their metabolisms work. It's the way their digestive system works. Cooler water fish have slower metabolisms than tropical fish. One source of food is not going to be suitable for all your fish. Frontosas are going to eat something very different to what trophies are going to eat. And it's important that you don't mix those two up or just think, I'll just feed them anything. I can't be bothered tonight. No, don't do that. Stick to the food that is specially designed for that species of fish. Take trophies, for example. Whatever species of trophies you keep, this applies to them. They are omnivorous fish, so that basically means that they do not need high levels of protein. They get their main source of food intake from vegetation. So whether you are feeding pellets or flakes, you always want to go for a vegetarian source of food, veggie formula. That is one that is going to do a lot better with your fish and for their digestive system. Stay away from higher sources of protein, so anything that's meat-based protein. There is a difference between what's meat-based protein and insect-based protein, and this does actually apply to fish. I know a lot of fish keepers might disagree with this, but there is a difference. And when you say keep away from protein levels, definitely stay away from meat-based proteins when you are dealing with trophies, and feed insect-based proteins sparingly. That is just the way that those fish are designed. Even though they come from the same lakes, same rules don't apply. So number 2, transporting fish. When you just get them fish in and it's transporting them, that can sometimes lead to stress within the fish if they haven't been starved beforehand. Also, what kind of diet have they been fed? It's important sometimes to continue with the sources of food that either the breeder or the place you're getting it from, the retailer, is actually feeding the fish, so you can ease them into that transition slowly. These are just the same as any other animal. When you're doing a transition of food, you don't want to switch straight away. It's gonna mess up the digestive, it's gonna cause them issues. Tummy upsets, mainly one of them. So this happens to fish as well. What you want to do is you want to be asking the person that you've bought the fish off, if it's a fish supplier or if it's being transported, what are they being fed? How are they going to be transported? Are they going to be fed before they get transported? And figure those types of things out so you can be prepared, so you can have a smoother transition as possible for your fish to settle into your new home, which is ultimately going to eliminate so many issues that may follow as a result of a simple thing just as that. Nothing saying that you have to stick to that food. It might not be exactly what you prefer to feed your fish, but do it gradually. There's a gradual transition to changing over foods to any animal, and fish are no different. Correct acclimation, pH, all of these things that you need to be considering. It isn't as severe and isn't as strict as when you were going into buying salt water, say for example. You do need to check the pH. It is an idea to say what is the pH at in your water, what is the hardness like in your water. Any reputable trader, breeder is going to want to give you that information. They're going to be happy that you've asked for that sort of information and know that you care enough to ask that sort of information, which ultimately that's the right thing to do, to be honest. It isn't as strict as what salinity are the fish in, what salinity is your water. It isn't that strict in a sense of and having to drip acclimate and do it very slowly. It isn't that strict when it comes to, say, cichlids. They are quite resilient, but their one downfall is stressed out fish get bloat. That is bottom line. So anything you can do to eliminate those chances, especially if you're spending pretty money trailed around stores and you have trips, the internet trips, loads of breeders to find that special fish that you really want, overlooking something as small as that, you're going to kick yourself later. Number 3, poor water quality. This is probably the number one cause of most issues in an aquarium. I see it all the time. Asking for advice on how to clear any sorts of diseases or a stressed out fish, anything like that. And the number one thing is poor water quality. You can't address anything else, anything secondary, until you have addressed poor water quality issues. Keeping on top of that is probably the most important thing and the best thing that you can do for your fish and for your aquarium. Should types of issues arise in the future, if you have that base covered, then it's going to make things a lot easier for you to handle any sorts of issues that come up in the future, any sort of infections, any sorts of diseases, any sorts of issues such as that. We all know with African cichlids, they're aggressive. We know this when we get into the hobby. We all know African cichlids have a bit of a reputation of being aggressive. But isn't that why we like them? You knew about African cichlids before you got into this hobby. That is their personality. That is what they are like. You can't change that. It's built into them. So the best advice I could give was, if any sorts of fights or scraps or any sorts of bullying takes place, you've got that area covered. Should they get damaged, should they get scraped across the rocks, should they get bitten, yeah, because they have teeth, should they get beat up so bad that you have to take them out of their tank. This has happened to me many times. Openly admit there's nothing wrong with that. You can't control the way your fish act. Don't try to. Yeah, there is things that you can help, and as long as you are doing the very best you can and following certain guidelines, then sometimes your fish are just going to fight, and that is nothing you're going to be able to do about it. However, concentrate on the things that you can do something about, such as keeping your water clean. Any sorts of interactions like that should happen, any sorts of disagreements should happen. They do get wounded and they do get injured. Clean water is going to help them recover so much faster and stop them from getting any sorts of infections or secondary infections due to stressed out fish not being able to heal correctly. Use a good filter. Now, this doesn't have to be the top of the range, top of the line, most expensive filter out there. It doesn't have to be that. As long as that filter that you're using has the correct capability to handle the volume of water that you have in your tank and the bioload that's in your tank, then it doesn't have to be the latest model. A 94 clear was going to get you from A to B just the same as what a Ferrari is. Maybe not as fast, but it's still going to get you there. Number 4, lack or the wrong types of environmental enrichment for the type of fish that you have. If you have an open water swimmer, you're going to want to make sure that they have a smaller place where they can actually hide to get away, or if females decide to breed, you want to have that where they can retire to, and they can hide. If any of them are particularly fragile or injured, they can go and hide there. But for the most part, you want to have open water. That is in the title. An open water swimmer needs open water. You want it to be decorative, and you want to have a certain types of enrichment, but the most important thing is that you do have that place where they can swim freely, they can chase each other about and do their thing, do what they do, as well as somewhere to hide. Do the types of research on the type of fish that you're going to keep, and what sort of environment do they naturally have, and do they like being in. If, say for example, you are going to keep shell-dwelling fish, again, the clue is in the name of the fish, shell-dwelling fish. They dwell in shells. That's what they do. That's their job. That is how their environment is. They live on the bottom and they live in shells. So that is how they create their homes. That is how they breed, and that is how they feel safe and comfortable in your tank, which in return, you are going to get so much more out of these fish if giving them what they need and what they deserve. I know there is certain fish keepers out there with Tanganyikans that do like to keep shell dwellers in. With other types of Tanganyikan fish, I'm not saying that you can't keep them in together. I'll get to that in point 5, but you need to make sure that you are accommodating for the fish that you have in your tank. Number 5, correct tank mates for the species of fish you want to keep. Now, as I said, there is never an exact science to this. Sometimes fish keepers who have had fish be compatible and work very well together in their tank situation, it might not necessarily apply to you. Yeah, there is guidelines and there is certain elements that you will need to stick to, things for your fish, but sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes fish that you would think would never get along absolutely perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them. Your water's fine, the environment's fine, perfect. Again, these fish are living creatures. They're individual. They have their individual personalities, and they are not going to conform to what you want them to do all of the time. That's a good thing. Keeping fish that have different dietary requirements is a red flag, and in my opinion, will soon come crumbling down. There is bound to be something happen sooner or later. So my advice would be, don't push it. Don't test that, and don't think my fish are the exception. You can't mess about when it comes to diet. That is one of the key features that sustain these creatures. You start messing about with their diet, then you're messing about with them, and you're going to run into issues. You're going to shorten their lifespan. You're going to cause them serious digestive issues, pain, suffering. That's not what you got into the hobby for, right? Keeping the fish that have the same dietary requirements, that is probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I possibly give when it comes to selecting tank mates for your centerpiece fish. I hate that word centerpiece fish. As I said previously, fish keepers do like to mix it up a bit, and with Tanganyikan tanks especially, they do like to put in shell dwellers in with more open water swimmers, and they can live harmoniously as long as they have the right kind of enrichment for each species, whether it be bottom dweller or whether it be middle dweller or whether it be open water swimmer. As long as they have the correct sort of enrichment, then 9 times out of 10 it probably will work out. As always, if you ever encounter any issues with your fish, fighting, fish not getting along, realizing that you have put the wrong types of fish in with each other, and you're thinking, oh my god, always have a backup tank. That is probably the best bit of advice I could have. Always have a spare tank, hospital tank, backup tank, running with a filter. Doesn't necessarily have to be cycled. You can get cycled media from other sources, which I will cover in another video, but that is probably the best advice I could give. Always have a hospital tank or a spare tank set up, ready to go. So those are probably 5 of the main reasons why your fish suffer from bloat. Ultimately, if you focus on those 5 things, that you are going to eliminate the chances of your fish becoming susceptible to this. One of the things that I always say about bloat is that it is a symptom of a condition. So you have to look into why this is happening. They don't just get bloat, there's a reason behind it. So that is more like a secondary thing to another issue that has caused this to happen. I will do a video explaining the signs of your fish if you think your fish have bloat, and what to do to try and treat bloat if this does occur. As I said, prevention is so much better than a cure. So if you can target these 5 areas, then hopefully you should prevent this from happening to your fish. So hopefully you found this helpful. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already. Click that notification bell, lets you know every time I upload a video. So with all that being said, don't forget to like, thumbs up, all that jazz, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye now.